Great. Looks like we're adding some new folks to the session. We'll give just another minute or two for everyone to join us on this session about wash hubs. Again, we'd like to appreciate our friends at Agenda for Change for sponsoring this session. And if you have a minute, go to the Pathable session page. You can answer 2 poll questions at the very beginning, just for fun as we all settle in. And also, if you want to put your name, organization, and location in the chat box so that we can see where different participants are from, that would be great. And we'll get started here in just a minute. It looks like we still have some folks joining us. Great, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today. It looks like we have folks from multiple countries with us, and we may add a few more as we go. Really excited to see everyone here today. So welcome to this session on the Hubbub about hubs. It is great to see so many of you here. I'm Laura Brunson from the Millennium Water Alliance, and I am serving today as your facilitator for this session. We would also like to thank Catherine Combs from UNC for helping us out with any logistical challenges on the session today. And Ingeborg, if we could have the slides with speakers for the session, that would be great. Thanks. And on the screen, you should see the names and photos of all of those who will be speaking today or who have helped to put this session together. And I'd like to give a special thanks to Ingeborg Krukert and Shara Bori from IRC, who do not have speaking parts in today's session, but they have put a lot of expertise and time into developing the session and are working right now behind the scenes to make sure that all of the logistics, chat, and presentations are well managed. So thank you to you both. We have a great session lined up for you today. We're all really excited about it. So we're going to start with a welcome and opening remarks from the Conrad and Hilton Foundation. Then we'll move to IRC to learn more about what exactly is a hub. And then we will go to the researchers from the USAID Sustainable Wash Systems Program, who are going to give us a couple of their very recent research insights. And then, so that you can all be looking forward to this, we have an excellent panel of folks who are working as part of hubs in multiple countries. And they'll be sharing with us some of their experiences, challenges, successes, and you will then have the opportunity to ask questions to these panelists. So as we're going through the first couple of presentations, if you think of questions, please feel free to jot those down or put those in the chat box in the Pathable window and go ahead and get those in there. And then when we get to the panel discussion, we will answer as many of your questions as we can. So that is enough from me. I am now pleased to introduce Melissa Goldman from the Conrad and Hilton Foundation, who is going to set the scene for us. Melissa, over to you.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everyone. I'm Melissa Goldman, the Program Associate of the Safe Water Initiative at the Hilton Foundation. First, I want to say thank you to everyone that is here today. This is my second time at UNC. It's definitely a little bit different this year, but still a great opportunity to connect and learn. So thank you. Us at the Hilton Foundation, as well as others, are putting a stake in the ground to invest in collective action, as we believe collective action is an approach that can lead us towards achieving SDG 6. We are investing in collective action for a number of reasons. First, the size of the problem is more complex than a single organization can manage. It'll take more than solving one logistical challenge or developing one technical solution. It requires multiple skill sets to think through various complexities of safe water. Second, the anticipated cost of reaching SDG 6 is very high. We cannot afford to invest in interventions that will result in continuous poor services and waste resources. We need evidence and data to ensure we, the sector, are investing our limited resources in the right solutions to address the right problems. And in talking about resources, I mean monetary, but also how we collectively allocate our time and resources to solutions that work. And finally, we have seen that we are not on track based on current projections to meet global WASH ambitions by 2030. Isolated interventions by individual organizations are not going to get us where we seek to go. We need multiple skill sets and multiple resources, and to better understand how they all come together to achieve SDG 6. So what exactly is collective action? This is not a new concept. We have heard it before and have used it differently throughout the sector. But to ground it in a common language, we are going to be defining it using USAID's terminology, which you see on the slide. Their definition states that collective action is a process for improving WASH service delivery in which sectoral stakeholders regularly convene and take joint actions to address shared problems. This includes the recognition that problems are complex and require multiple skill sets and a shared vision for solutions, and where roles and responsibilities are defined and all are accountable for their actions. This definition is fluid and purposefully broad and can mean something different depending on the context of the entities that are engaging in the collective action. Next slide, please. So it's important to note that there are a variety of approaches to collective action and that there is not a one-size-fits-all solution or approach. Collective action is an umbrella term and it's used to describe a variety of approaches. Some of the approaches are listed on the slide. It could be government-led or NGO-led, incorporate a shared work plan or individual work plans, or have an insider or neutral party as the convener. One of these approaches to successful collective action is to have a hub, which is the approach that we're going to be focusing in on today. The goal of this is to identify common lessons, context-specific factors, and areas where more information is needed. Next slide, please. A hub, commonly known as a backbone organization, acts as a central coordinating body in a collective action approach to achieve a shared vision or objective. And just like collective action itself can function and be governed differently depending on needs. We'll be going deeper into this later in the presentation. But just to be clear, a hub is not collective action and collective action is not the hub, but rather a hub is just one aspect of implementing a collective action approach. So we are focusing on hubs today because we have seen them as beneficial to successful collective action in multiple contexts. They have acted as a backbone organization for district-based WASH programs. They gather partners around a shared vision, have facilitated shared monitoring of progress in WASH services. They have acted as central place for communication and have also helped district governments convene implementing organizations to respond to the COVID-19 crisis, which we have seen recently. We are also focusing on the hub today as we have more to learn to truly understand the role and value in having a hub and how it can be applied in different contexts. We at the foundation are excited about the role of the hub and have been interested in continuing to learn. We're excited to take this journey with you and discuss this more today. So before moving on, we'd like to ask you a few more polling questions. If you go back to that Pathable site that you did the polling questions on before, there'll be 2 questions for you there. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Melissa. And while everyone is answering these polling questions about collective action, Ingeborg, could we see the results from the first 2 questions? Great. Wow, that's fun. Not surprising, but lots of travelers in the group and also lots of hand washing. That's wonderful. I appreciate the person who said they cannot keep count of how many times they've already washed their hands today. Great, we'll just take 10 more seconds for answering the poll questions. Great. Thanks, Melissa. That was a really great opening to let us know where we're going with this session today. And I'm excited for us to learn more about this role of the hub and the position that it plays in collective action approaches. So now let's dive into more detail. Let's go to Jane Nabunya of IRC, who's going to share with us more about what a hub is and also what it is not. Jane, over to you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. And greetings from Uganda. It's evening here, and so many things have happened during the day. I'll pick it up from where Melissa stopped. Melissa introduced the collective action aspects, and basically starting from a point of the size of the problem. The size of the problem in WASH is very big, and you can't stand aside and say, I'll do it alone, or me as a person, or we as an institution can do it alone. And that's where the hub comes in. And Melissa also mentioned that the hub is one aspect of implementing collective action. There are many other approaches. There are many other aspects that one can use. We in IRC and Millennium Water Alliance have been using the hub. And I must say, even before I come to the end, that the hub has worked for us because it brings together different institutions, different people, different governments at different levels to collaborate and to work together. But knowing very well that really a hub is a convening place. So I'll go through describing the hub with you, and that's my outline, a very brief introduction, and then get into what is a hub, how hubs support collective action, what the hub does not do, a few challenges, and some concluding thoughts related to the hub. If you could go to the next slide, please. In terms of introduction, very briefly, collaborations among multiple organizations sound very simple in theory. It's very easy to just say, come, let's work together, come, let's play together. But in practice, it can be difficult. And that's why within a hub, you agree on how to hub. And that's why in IRC and Millennium Water Alliance, we call it hubbing. How are you hubbing? How are you coming together? How are you convening? And how are you sharing and learning together? So how do you get people to work with you who don't work for you or for each other? And that's the main cause. What is the cause? The thread that is bringing you together and calling for your attention and calling for your time and your resources. And when you look at the ropes in the first illustration and the hands holding together, it basically confirms that, yeah, you need a meeting point, and that's the middle. Somewhere in the thread, there's a middle. And all these ropes or threads are coming together and converging at that point. And then the hands holding together and saying, we are expected to work together, and we want to work together. The interest to work together has to be there from the start. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult for the working together to happen, and therefore the collective action to happen. Next slide, please. So what is a hub? In very simple terms, a hub is a support structure. It could be an organization, it could be a network with a coordinating secretariat, it could be a coalition, it could be an alliance that brings together people and institutions to do all those things that you see in there, to learn, to convene, to facilitate, to connect, to build capacity of each other, to advocate, to catalyze, to monitor, a number of things, to mentor each other, to share knowledge and to manage the knowledge. So that's the center that brings the different institutions and the different people in networks or coalitions or alliances together. It can also be called the backbone organization or a systems leader because it's the rallying point. It's the focal point. It's the core point that brings together the different institutions. And in the next slides, I'll explain the how and why of that. But the hub also strengthens government. We work with government. We don't work in space that is not provided by government. So we see the hub as that unit that can support or strengthen government capacity, and more especially enable the governments to shine. Governments have to shine. They give us space to operate. So you don't come from wherever you're coming from and you think, well, because you have the resources, you have the people, you can shine brighter than government. Government gives us the space to do that, to be the hub, to convene and facilitate and learn. Next slide, please. And it can be done in different ways. The photos really are examples from Ghana and from Uganda, where the convening takes place, discussions take place. All those people you see in the photos are from very different organizations, and in some cases, both district level or sub-district level, and also at the national level. And the whole coming together to facilitate collective action is to discuss things, agree on things, and mainly agree on how to work together and how to accomplish the agenda and the tasks that they've agreed on. Next slide. So how do hubs make collective action more effective? Hubs can do that in different ways, but these are the underlying aspects that we have tried and tested in our countries where we operate. First and foremost, the hub must have a guiding vision or a strategy, that which is bringing people together, that which they see from a distance and want to achieve and want to accomplish. And they all have to have an interest in that. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult if people come together, institutions come together, and they don't have an agreed vision or one strategy to work together to accomplish a particular goal. The hubs also have, the different institutions are expected to support and align people, align activities, align resources, align connections and linkages with the governments, with civil society, with private sector, but the aligning and supporting the aligning to take place must happen. Hubs also make collective action work because they establish shared measurement practices. The different institutions come together and agree on not only what they want to achieve and what to do to achieve that, but how to measure their progress. What kind of milestones should they put in place to measure the progress towards achieving the collective impact, that collective bit, the joint bit that they agreed to do together. And by having a hub, the hub convenes that kind of discussion and convenes the different institutions to come to such agreements. The hub also makes collective action more effective by cultivating community and public will, involving the target population, involving governments, involving civil society organizations. The different institutions that come together to form the hub agree on who the beneficiaries are and how to reach them and how to involve them. And that is done as a collective with a proper strategy and with a guiding vision. Hubs also help to advance policy. Most cases when collective action happens, and we people who work in the countries and in the districts, we see that the coming together and bringing together different institutions, it's easier to influence policy, it's easier to understand policy together, and it's easier to hold sometimes government accountable for promises that they make or the policies that they have that they put out there. So the collective action through the hubs is easy to achieve. Mobilizing resources. Advocacy, for example, and influencing requires quite a lot of resources. Human beings, information, funds. How do you do that as only an individual organization? And if you want collective impact, then you come together in the hub to mobilize those resources. And then I won't go through the rest in the interest of time, but hubs also are there to drive long-term momentum and growth the different institutions come together and they can see the future. They can see the big forest as well as the trees in that forest. So they can say, oh, like for example, in Uganda, we have the National Development Plan up to 2025. How do we contribute towards achieving that development plan? Ingeborg, next, please. Having heard about what the hub is, there are three areas that from practice also define what the hub does not do. The hub does not set the group's agenda. If IRC is the hub in our district of Kabarole, we do not set the agenda for the group. We are conveners. We enable the converging to take place. We enable the learning to take place. The agenda is set by the group, by the members of the hub, the partners that form the hub. A hub does not drive or independently determine solutions. Even if in IRC we have a basket full of solutions, if we are leading the hub or we are part of a hub, we expect that the solutions will be determined or identified by members of the hub. And then we don't self-appoint. If you are a hub, you don't self-appoint. And for me, from experience working as a hub, it is that self-appointing that causes problems, where you feel that because you are the hub, you know everything, you know everybody, so you can go ahead and just do what you want to do. There you are self-appointing, and it demotivates partners that are part of that hub. Collective action requires that you're all moving together and you all agree that if IRC is the hub, it's the collecting point. It doesn't determine the agenda and that doesn't determine the solutions. Next, please. There are a few challenges in hubbing or being a hub. The hub has partners, it has members that came together to be part of the hub. So sometimes there's slow response from the partners, even on agreed plans, on agreed activities, or on agreed actions. And so you as the hub, if like IRC is the hub, coordinating that and making sure that, well, follow-up reminders, polite reminders, because remember, you're not self-appointed, but that can be a challenge because sometimes it takes time. Balancing multiple interests. All these partners and members of the hub come with their own interests, but they identify the main goal to be part of that hub. And they say, we want to be part of this hub because this is the goal that we also want to achieve. But it doesn't mean that they offload their multiple interests, their other interests. And sometimes balancing those interests that are really multiple can be a big challenge. And the hub, as a convener, has to keep an eye on that. There's competition for resources, where different partners can say, oh, if we are going to do resource mobilization, I can either head the resource mobilization or I'll not share opportunities where we can raise resources. Then I keep those opportunities to myself. And then sometimes we have to all go to the same development partner for support. And those can cause quite some bit of conflicts. Mutual fear to critique each other. In the hub, as I said, institutions come together, people come together. And sometimes you say, oh, but this one is probably closer to the development partner who's providing the resources. How can I critique that person? How can you say this is not working or this is not moving in the direction that I wanted to move towards in a polite way? So there's that fear, and in most cases, then people will end up keeping quiet. Responses to leadership roles and functions. Even if you have a group of 20 or 30, sometimes individuals in those organizations may fear to take up leadership roles because as you saw the long list of the hub functions, learning, convening, monitoring, documenting, some people may not want to pick up any of those pieces. And most cases, it ends up with the institution that is coordinating the hub. Other challenges also include partners already having agreements with the funders. You have a hub, that is funded by one development partner, different agreements, different grants that have been signed. And then the partners feel that, oh, we have already an agreement. And what is bringing me in this particular hub is because the funder is one. So let me just respect the funder. And then we will always hear comments like, this is not in my agreement. This is not in my grant agreement. How do I put it there? And that can be a big challenge. Next slide, please. As I conclude, the real hub of being a hub is the joy of working together. It is the happiness that comes when, as a collective, you achieve the goal and you are able to either influence a policy or engage government or engage the private sector, doing it together. And also where the different individuals in the hub or in institutions feel happy that their own goals, their own respective goals are being achieved. And those two photos you see, the first one with people really happy is a team from Ghana. That's the hub in Ghana. IRC Ghana is the hub for the Hilton partners in that country, and they are happy that things are working out. And those are representatives from the different partner groups. The one on the left is the Honorable Minister of Water and Environment from Uganda receiving the master plan, the district wash master plan from the chair of Kabarole district. And that particular master plan was put together through a hub approach where different institutions came together with IRC Uganda as the hub, supporting and facilitating and helping to coordinate the development of that master plan. I think, Laura, that is my last slide, if I'm not mistaken.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane.
And I thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks, Jane. And we'll pause for just a second then to go back to the poll results to see how many of you have been involved in collective action approaches and to see what your knowledge is about a hub. Excellent. Looks like about 3/4 of our audience has been involved in some sort of collective action approach now or in the past. And the vast majority of you answered the question about a hub correctly. It was a bit easy, but clearly you all have a lot of knowledge. So we will now expect very excellent and challenging questions for you from you, when we get to the panel discussion. So now let's get ready for our next speaker. And I really appreciate that Jane made the point that these types of collective action approaches can sound simple in theory, but really can be very difficult to execute in practice. And they take time and a lot of intentional effort to really pull these kinds of strong partnerships, shared vision, et cetera, together, which is part of the helpful role that the hub can play. But as we could see from Jane's concluding pictures, these types of hubs can also be these types of collective action approaches can be very helpful and also can be a lot of fun. So now on that note, let's go to Kimberly Pugel from the University of Colorado Boulder, who's going to share with us some very recent research insights from the Sustainable Wash Systems program about collective action approaches and hubs. Kimmy, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Laura. And Ingeborg, you can move on to the next slide. Today, I'll just be presenting a few preliminary results from a cross-case comparison that we did as part of the USAID Sustainable Wash Systems Learning Partnership. We decided to do this cross-case comparison largely because a lot of the discussion in the wash sector on collective action has been based on case studies. You know, experts like Jane and IRC and the Hilton Foundation sharing a lot of their expertise from within their organization. But there haven't really been cross-case comparisons within WASH. A lot of the cross-case comparisons that look across multiple cases have been in the US and Europe. And so we really needed a cross-case comparison to understand how all of these cases in WASH are comparing to one another, where they overlap and where they differ, so that we can better apply these approaches in our sector. Next slide. So we conducted a cross-case comparison of so far 11 cases across Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda, spanning administrative levels and different areas of WASH. We collected documentation and data on over 40 factors across all 11 of these cases. And that includes a few of those factors that Melissa had up on the screen at the beginning of the session, things about the hub and if it's convened by an insider and things like that. So we used fuzzy set qualitative comparative analysis to synthesize and distill down those 40 factors to groupings of factors that were most important for success in these 11 cases. Next slide. There's a lot of information here. I'm actually presenting a poster session later today. We'll post some information in the chat that goes through more of this, more of these details. But the point that I want to make, or I want to make a few points today in this presentation, mostly that there's a lot of different approaches to collective action. We're seeing in these results 4 groupings of factors, and many of these factors overlap. So for example, all 4 pathways gain the support of local government. And so there's not just one way for collective action approaches to work well. One thing to really draw your attention to right now is that all 4 of these pathways had a hub. The 2 on the left supported the government as the hub rather than having a separate organization. IRC, for example, the example that Jane was talking about in Ghana, IRC was the hub. And so those two cases on the, or groupings of factors, sorry, on the right, had a separate hub organization. So that would be more like what Jane was just describing. And so a really big takeaway is that hubs look different. You have to be very intentional about how you design the hub. And so the next panelists are going to be talking about some of their experiences of how they've designed the hub. If you have any more questions or want some more information about this study that we're conducting, I'll be presenting these results in that poster session later today. The information is in the chat, as well as a link to an interactive dashboard that goes through these results that I'll also be answering questions about in my poster session. Thanks. Back to you, Laura.
Excellent. Thanks, Kimmy. So it's interesting to note that even with these diverse types of collective impact, they all had a hub, but in different cases, the hub looks very different in terms of who leads it and what its role is. So these are some of the questions that we as the session presenters have been grappling with the last few months. And to dive more into this, into the nitty-gritty of the development and operations of hubs, we will now go into our panel discussion. So we'd like to ask Sean Peabody, and we'll ask Sean Peabody to moderate, and we'll ask all of our panelists many tough questions and get their great insights. So we'll start with the panelists just briefly sharing for a minute or two about the program and the hub that they support. And then Sean has a few questions to start off for the panelists, and then we will open it up to your questions as participants in this session. So please feel free to put all your challenging questions into the Pathable chat, and we will moderate that and ask as many as we can to our panelists. So now let's welcome up to the stage, if you will, Vida Duty from IRC Ghana, Tedla Mulatu from the Millennium Water Alliance Ethiopia, Jane Nabunya from IRC Uganda, Desta Dimtsi from Tetra Tech in Ethiopia, and Andrea Jones from the Hilton Foundation. Sean, over to you and the panel.
Great. Thanks, Laura. First, I'd just like to have the panel introduce themselves briefly. So maybe we'll go left to right, top and to bottom. So start with Tedla. And then if you could just say a word or two about the hub that you've worked on. If you've worked on multiple, maybe just pick one. And Andrea, for you, I've got some funny things happening with the video here. Andrea, for you, maybe you could tell us about Hilton's interest in hubs and what you see why you see value in investing there. So let's start with Tedla.
Okay, thank you, Sean, and I hope you can listen to me. I'm Tetra Mulatu from the Millennium Water Alliance in Ethiopia. The hub that I'm working with is a hub that includes World Vision, Water Aid, CRS, CARE, IRC Wash, and CRS. It's funded by the Conrad and Hilton Foundation, and we are implementing a sustainable wash program in Amhara National Regional Government. So yeah, this is the hub that I'm working with, Sean.
That's great. Thanks so much. While we're in Ethiopia, then let's go to Desta. Desta, are you there? Might give him a second. Let's go to Vida, and we'll come back to Desta. Vida, are you able to unmute?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
We got you back. Okay, Desta, let's try Desta, then we'll do Vida.
All right.
Oh man, the virtual gods are not with us right now. Okay, I see you moving now, Desta. Why don't you try?
Okay.
No, it's not working, Desta. Well, let's come back to you. Okay, Vida, I promise. Let's go to you now.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from Ghana. And I'll be talking about our collective action program that we have with the Stiffy North District in the Ahafo region of Ghana. It is a partnership with the local government where we are working together with the local government, traditional authorities, and everybody in the district to provide water services to everyone. Our target is to meet the 2030 goal of the SDGs. We are working together with Hilton grantee partners, IRC, Save Water Network, World Vision, as well as a number of US-based Hilton grantees, providing different resources to be able to support the district to meet that agenda. IRC serves as the hub in this partnership, connecting the work that we do at the district level together and supporting the partnership and bringing the lessons to the national level to inform policy and general practice. We'll be sharing more about this exciting program that is showing great results as we proceed on the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, let's try Jane.
Hello again. This is Jane Nabnyamulumba from Uganda. I'll be sharing more about IRC work in Uganda and specifically in Kabarole, where we are the hub for the Hilton partners that are implementing the Hilton Safe Water Strategy in Kabarole and also in the region, mainly the Acquire Institute, Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor, the consulting arm of WUSUP, as it's called, supporting the Midwestern umbrella of the Ministry of Water and Environment, as well as PATH that has work in Kabarole and also in the bigger region. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Let's try you, Andrea, next. So can you tell us a little bit about Hilton's interest in learning more about hubs in your portfolio?
Good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Andrea Jones. I'm the program officer at the Conrad and Hilton Foundation. For many of you may know, the Hilton Foundation has been in the water sector for over 30 years now, but it's only been in the last, I would say, 5 years that we've been very intentional in terms of how we're making our investments, particularly with the goal of establishing district level water services for everyone, and really looking to push for safely managed water at the point of use. And so going through and thinking about this goal, it became very clear to us the importance of establishing multi-sectoral partnerships and platforms at this local level that ensured inclusivity of all actors that are invested in water services. So how do you bring government, civil society, users, as well as INGOs to go through an inclusive planning process for water services that are of need to communities, and then from there, implement against that shared vision and goals. It's through this approach that we've seen that having a strong coordinating backbone body has been a crucial component of that in terms of being able to synthesize information from various actors, but also ensure that the work that's being done isn't duplicative, that it's reinforcing each other towards that shared goal. And there is an ounce of accountability within the work, and that the actors in which are coming together to support government are actually fulfilling on those mandates. And so we've been investing in multiple organizations such as Millennium Water Alliance, IRC, and others in different districts to go about this type of model of collective impact with a hub role in furtherance of this goal.
Thanks, Andrea. Okay, let's try Desta one more time. And if that doesn't work, we have a backup plan. So Desta, are you able to unmute? Okay, let's go to the backup plan. Lucia Henry works closely with Desta. She's based in Washington, D.C., but frequently goes out to Ethiopia to work with that team. Lucia, can you tell us a little bit about the hubs that you work with?
Okay, so good morning, good evening. I'm Lucia Henry. I work for Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech is part of USAID's Sustainable Wash Systems Learning Partnership, applying a collective action approach. The work we are doing under Tetra Tech specifically is applying this approach in 2 towns in Ethiopia, Waliso and Debre Birhan. And the main goal really is to improve the delivery of sanitation services in urban areas. I should mention that, as part of this consortium, or other members of this consortium include environmental incentives, where Sean is coming from, Kimi from UCB, as well as IRC and others. Thanks.
Thanks, Lucia. Great. So I think it'd be nice if we could go around quickly one more time, and it would be great if we could hear just about one big challenge that you've experienced with the hubs. So let's try and go in that same order. Tedla, can you tell us about a challenge with a hub that you've experienced?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, of course, working with the hub, or working as a hub, as a Millennium Water Alliance in Ethiopia, is one of my best experience in my career, and lots of great things to mention. But those all great things are not without a challenge, and one of the challenges this required time that we have to reach at a common consensus. Even if this Millennium Water Alliance is a permanent alliance of NGOs I mentioned earlier, we have a shared vision, but in every topic and discussion point or collective action, there are challenges of bringing us as quick as we want to some shared agenda. So the time required, as well as the organization, the variation in the organization policies and procedures are not always the same. So these are some of the challenges with all those great things, but these are some of the challenges, and thank you.
That's great. Vida, how about you?
I think I'd like to share our experience with the initial stage of bringing us together. We knew ourselves in the sector, but it had been nice meeting people in meetings and what have you. But when we agreed to work together, it meant that we had to shed off some things that we had in order to take in and work on new behaviors. And so getting the partnership to make that adjustment that is required for us to mutually work together from the beginning was the initial challenge. It meant that some of us had to leave the district that we have worked with for so many years into going together to work with one district. We had adopted different approaches. Some of us had worked closely through government. Others had previously gone directly to work with communities. And so that adjustment to put government in the driving seat, that adjustment to align your programming with others initially was the challenge. And now we've been able to overcome that and beginning to reap the results of this way of work.
That's great. Thanks, Vida. Jane, over to you. Can you share a challenge?
Thank you, Sean. Yes, there are many challenges. I listed some of them earlier, but for me and IRRC, and especially within the support from Hilton to implement the Hilton Safe Water Strategy, the main challenge is having the different partners or members of the hub not in one district. And also having a partner that supports a government institution, and the government institution covers 15 districts. So how do you coordinate all that? How do you convene the different partners when you are not in one locality? And that's why having a shared vision and a shared strategy have come to help us address that challenge. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Jane. Andrea, can you share a challenge with maybe not directly doing, but supporting hubs?
Yes, of course. So when we had our strategy approved in 2017, I would say that we had very high ambitions in terms of collective action and wanting to organize. I would say in part, though, a lot of it was theory. I know collective action is not a new concept within the WASH sector, but the way in which we wanted to go about implementing, there wasn't necessarily a blueprint to follow. And so because of that, I think as we started to communicate our expectations around working at a district level, collaborating with other organizations and through the hub, initial confusion naturally grew from our partners of, well, what is a hub? What is the services in which it's offering, and how do I actually engage with the hub? And so that kind of sparked conversations with us to say to ourselves, okay, this idea of working in collective action isn't necessary. It's known, but it's not necessarily common, and the blueprint isn't necessarily there to allow it to happen in as easy of a way. And so for us to help overcome those challenges, I think for us as a funder, it was important to realize, well, funding needs to be there to even allow that to happen, to allow organizations to come together. And so we call that incentives for collaboration, essentially. I think second, what we've acknowledged and recognized the importance of really defining the value proposition of the hub. What exactly are the services in which it can offer that address a particular need or service for those that you want at the table? And with that is engaging those different actors, whether it's government, civil society, service providers early on to understand what is it that they're not getting now that they could get. And I would say kind of imposing some of those type of thinking has been really instrumental to see how now over time, there's been more gradual pull and demand from certain organizations to want to participate and be a part of these district programs and to, I would say, lean into some of the services that the hub does. One of them in particular, our partners have really vocalized on is the level of networks and connections that the hub can have with local as well as national actors to help inform their programming, implementation, and the like. And so those are some examples in which we've seen the kind of gradual, the starting pains of this work, but the gradual evolution of it starting to come together as well.
Great, thanks, Andrea. Lucia.
One of the early challenges we saw in setting up in the early stages of these collective action groups in the two towns we're working in was this problem of getting the decision makers in the town to take up some of the solutions or ideas that were coming from the collective action groups. And this in part was a function of the membership of the collective action groups, which were primarily sort of your specialists, your technical officers who did not have that decision-making authority. And this is where the hub stepped in and used its convening power to bring the decision makers as well as the technocrats together at the table to be able to have that discussion, to be able to increase the profile or rather raise the profile of sanitation and specifically discuss these solutions that were coming out of the collective action groups and translate them to not necessarily policies at that stage, but sort of strategies that can be taken up at that level.
Can I add a small thing, Sean?
Oh, it's working. Yes, please do.
Yeah. So the main challenge you see at the beginning, bringing stakeholder on the board is it's crucial. And also you establish a learning alliance. And after that, a staff turnover also, it is a problem, and updating again and again is very challenging, as well as managing multiple interests of stakeholders also as a learning alliance is a big challenge in the beginning, but over the time it will maintain and turn over the staff as well as understanding the process also. When they're understanding very well, it is really better to manage or working with the learning alliance. But in the beginning, as I said, it is very difficult to bring all those stakeholders on board because they have different interests and what they have got from that learning alliance and how to respond or working together with those learning alliance. So as a challenge, it's very difficult to bring on board those learning alliance at the beginning.
Yeah, thanks so much, Destin. I'm glad we've got your connection working.
Yeah, it is back.
Great. So now we're going to try something a little bit new. We're going to go to the audience questions, and I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to try and do some graphic note taking. And we've been trying this out with this last question. So we've got a mural board here, and we've started to add audience questions, and then we've got Kimmy helping us out to try and take notes here as we're going, so make it a little bit easier to follow along, but then also you can do a screen grab if you want to catch this, and we can circulate this afterwards. So let's go to this next question here. I'll leave this up so you can read those. But this blue question here. So some funders are on board with this, but what have been the conversations with other funders who might not understand why things are taking so long and why extra money is needed beyond direct programming to change systems? So let me ask Andrea that question first to see if there's been any donor dialogue that you're aware of on this subject, and then others can chime in too.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think a challenge has been through this process, and something we'd be interested in looking at it further, is that we know there's value within different members of participating, but yet I don't think we've done a great job of quantifying those benefits and how those exceed the costs of convening. We know there's various upfront costs with as overcoming different challenges, getting members together, and then to continue the momentum of collective action. I would say, though, I think in Kimmy's presentation is that not necessarily has there been strong measurement put in to actually see how, in fact, collective action has worked towards specific objectives and outcomes and in that benefit. So I think from a funder side, sometimes it's difficult to then say to their board or governance structure that putting in money towards this kind of approach essentially leads to more sustainable solutions versus another. And so being able to make the investment case for other funders, I think is going to be important going forward. That is definitely how we're seeing it. We're seeing that investing in local institutions, collective impact is the means in which to get to more sustainable long-term solutions. I think another second thing that funders struggle with is that needing to make immediate results, so seeing quick wins. So I think where we can show with collective impact that it's actually leading to service delivery that are better for communities is a way in which to influence other funders. I do think there are funders that are genuinely more interested in doing systems approach. Maybe it's more under the guise of governance, but they are there. It's just understanding how do you match this more system strengthening messaging with also delivering on immediate results to communities through service delivery.
Thanks, Andrea. Great. We've got a lot of great questions coming in, so I want to move to the next question, but we can come back if we want to, if somebody wants to chime in. So COVID has forced many things to move from in-person to virtual. How has this impacted your work with hubs? What opportunities did the shift to virtual highlight? What challenges did it bring? And let me ask Tedla this question first.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's very, very clear how this COVID pandemic has affected our operations. And in our case, it has affected the operation in many, many ways. But we have also used the opportunity in so many ways. Just to mention a few, one is in consultation with our program partners and the donor, Conrad and Hilton Foundation, we have repurposed part of our funding to strengthen the resilience of the district wash system by training the human resource, the managers, experts, including cleaners, to prepare for the COVID prevention. And we have also strengthened the level of awareness of the community in the fight against the COVID. That is from the very technical programmatic aspect. In terms of logistics, in terms of the ways it has prevented people to come together, to convene with program partners, to convene with the government and community members, we have to contextualize our way of operation. One best opportunity we are trying to make effective use is we have established a group on Telegram that brings together the district level authorities from the national level, the State Minister, Water Development Commission, and our program partners, a diverse group of people to solve, to troubleshoot challenges, as well as discuss on a number of policy issues, including how best we could use this COVID pandemic to strengthen the WASH system at different levels. So yeah, it's a challenge, but there are ways that we have tried to mitigate in this and so many other ways. That's my response, COVID and all.
Thanks, Tedla. If anybody else has something particularly novel or different that they'd like to add on the COVID, go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Hello. Hello, Sean. This is Vida from Ghana. I just also want to add that the COVID was a challenge, but it's also opened a lot of opportunities, and then also new ways of us even working more efficiently. And so where our district is and all of us scattered, we've been able to keep the partnership together by bringing our meetings, changing it from in-person to virtual meetings. So we have our meetings on Teams. And what we've also even noticed is that it's been even more effective. We spend less time on Teams and we are able to practically get to the results. But the most impactful ones that we've been able to do is we've been able, through this approach, work to support the districts to respond to the COVID issues. Jointly, we were able to pull together a proposal, and we were able to solicit additional funding from the Hilton Foundation, as well as other sources for the districts to be able to quickly respond to the COVID crisis. Through this, we are working towards providing wash services to all the healthcare facilities and PPEs and all other resources that they need to fight the pandemic. Some trainings have also been given. The other bit also was that government came out with a policy of providing free water services during the pandemic, and a guideline was issued. So we had a webinar on the response to the government free water, what district assemblies need to do, and to be able to get reimbursement. Through these engagements, the small town water systems have been able to better streamline their reporting processes and now are able to get reimbursement from the government. By also bringing some of our discussions online, it enabled us to even reach out beyond the district, because now many more people across the country, as well as even our external partners, were able to join in some of the meetings. So the adjustment has also taught us to even work better in a different way. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Sean, may I go ahead?
Yeah, please go ahead, Lucia.
I think it's fair to say that when COVID, the pandemic, struck, our way of working was immediately disrupted. But one of the things that did happen was, the hub's role is, identifying and responding to sort of targeted requests and needs from the coalition. And one of the requests that came through from our coalition, or rather our collective action groups, was to support the rollout of this prevention and mitigation prevention for COVID training that had been implemented by the federal ministry at the national level, rather, in Ethiopia. And what they were looking for was support to roll this out at community level, or rather at town level and community level. And this is where the Hub and SWS had stepped in to help not just in terms of funding this exercise, but also providing some of the training itself, providing some of the technical expertise. And I think it has helped, for lack of a better word, solidify the relationship with the towns and with the coalitions, because we were able to respond to this need at that point in time.
Can you add a bit, Sean?
Sure, yeah. Go ahead, Desta.
As Lucia said, our learning are a task force for the town COVID mitigation team, and they are asking us to support how they're responding or prevention with the COVID-19. Then we organize discussing with them and provide a TOT training for the health professionals, and the health professionals, they are cascading the training at different level for the mitigation of the COVID-19. For in both towns, for more than 215 community representatives, health professionals, and also learning alliance members that are providing training, as well as for decision makers, how they are coordinating to mitigate the COVID-19 pandemic. So due to the restriction of travel, we are communicating with our learning alliance members through the Telegram and develop the proposal and identify the target group for the training, and based on the Ministry of Health and Public Health Institution guideline, and we prepare the training for all respective target groups. So we are supporting, we are working together with them, and they are really very excited about the support the coalition is providing in together with the Tetra SWS team. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Desta. Andre, well, why don't we close it out with this question? Do you have anything